Welcome to Naresh IT Technologies. This is Ramachandra. In the last video, we did talk about the differences between procedure oriented approach as well as object oriented approach. Now, in this video, I am going to be highlighting what is a object oriented approach exactly. Here we have a terminology like OOPS, nothing but object oriented programming system. What exactly object oriented programming system? It is one technique. It is a technique which is going to be provide some rules and regulations. So if you want to develop any technology like C++ and .NET, Java, if you want to develop any technology, we required some fundamental techniques. We required some methodologies. We required some techniques or methodologies. With the help of these methodologies only, we can able to develop the technique. That methodology we can call as what? Object oriented programming system. Now, basically object oriented program system is not a technology, it is only technique. With the help of this technique we can develop what? Technologies like C++ and .NET and Java itself. Object oriented doesn't providing any syntaxes. Object oriented doesn't providing any syntaxes and any API. Just these are providing some rules only. By using these rules, we can able to develop our technologies. Here I am highlighting reason of the object oriented. Why should we go for the object oriented system principles? If you take a real world, everything is one object. For example, a person is one object, animal is one object, like plan is one object. If you want to represent anything, definitely we required concept like what here? Object oriented programming system. See here I mentioned OOPS is represent the real world entity. For example, I want to develop one institute. If you want to develop institute, we required some staff. So here staff is one object. Under the staff we have different types of objects like office boy and help desk and like faculties. All these things are what? Real world objects. If you want to represent any real world object through technology, if you want to represent any real world object through technology, we required a technique. That technique we can call as what? Object oriented programming system. One more time I am repeating. If you want to represent any real world object through technology wise, we required a object oriented programming system. What exactly providing? These are providing modularities. These are providing securities. Lot of efficient principles are going to be given by what? Object oriented programming system principles. So here what is object oriented? What is OOPS means? An object oriented programming system. What is the use of the object oriented programming system? What exactly it is? It is a technique. It is providing a suggestions, but it is not a technologies. If you want to represent any object in the format of technology, we require what here? Object oriented programming system principles. Now mainly if you want to represent any real world object through technology wise, we required two ultimate object oriented blocks. Those are what? Class and object. Those are what? Class and object. Now what exactly an object? So before going to talk about the object, let me give what exactly a class. Here class is nothing but a specification, a blueprint of existing one. For example, I want to build one house. If you want to build one house, we required one proper plan. Without a plan in the real world, we cannot develop building. So to make a plan to represent those buildings, we require what? OOPS concepts. Here blueprint is not really exist in the world. This is only a specification. With the help of this specification, we can going to be develop a real world existing things like building. I want to stitch a shirt. So what we required? Some measurements we required. So measurements we required, cloth we required, all these things comes under what? Class, imaginary part. So once by using the measurements, once we stitch a cloth, then we can able to wear that. That is comes under what? Real world existing things. So here simply explain about a class means a class is a imaginary part. Class is a imaginary thing. Now if you comes to the object, object is what? Real world existing thing. Real world existing thing. Now one of the best example for imaginary things, for example, if I speaks like, after completion of this session I'm going to be eat one fruit. If I speaks like this, fruit means what type of fruit image you are going to be recognize? You are not getting any particular fruit image. You have different images like mango, strawberry, guava, pineapple, like this. But if I speaks like, after completion of this session I want to eat one strawberry, then everybody get a particular picturization about that fruit. The particular picturization is comes under the real world existing thing, we can call as what? Object. Then imaginary we can call as what? A class. So here if anything which is existed in the real world, definitely the thing which have three characters. That real world existing things having three characteristics. What are the three characteristics? Very simple. One is identity, another one is properties, another one is functionalities. So here each and every object having three characteristics. One is identity, another one is properties, and next one is what? Functionalities. For example, if I am taking class like a person, if you talks about after completion of this session I am going to be meet one person. So which person you are going to be recognize? You are not getting particular person image. That is what? A class. If I speaks like, after completion of the class I am going to be meet Sachin Tendulkar. So here Sachin Tendulkar is comes under what? One real world object. So here if you wants to talks about the Tendulkar, the Tendulkar having some particular characteristics, those are what? Identity, property, as well as what? Functionalities. So here simply we can say, if you talks about any object concept in Java, object oriented approach, or if you talks about object concept in Java language, that object having what here? Three characteristics. One is the identity, another one is property, and third one is what? Functionalities. Basically already I told you OOPS is a technique. Maybe most of the people feels like Java is an object oriented, means all these class and object, inheritance, exceptions, encapsulations, all these things are part of the Java. No, This is only one technique. The technique is going to be used by the different languages. If the technique is used by the C++, object oriented technique used by the C++, then the C++ we can call it as what? Object oriented programming language. If Java using OOPS, then we can call it as what? Java is an object oriented. So here, if you talks about any object, now I am not talking about any particular language side. If it talks about object in the real world, that object having what? 3 characteristics. For example, observe here, if you take one object like what? Human being. This is one object. This is one object. This object having some characteristics. What are those characteristics? The first one is identity. The first one is identity. What is the identity? A name of an object. For example, if it speaks like Ram, this is the name of an object. Now, let me take one more image. Here I am taking one more object. This object is also having some identity. What is that? Here I am taking identity like Varun, or let me take identity like Kiran. Yes. So here this object having identity and this object is also having what? Identity. So what is the meaning of that? One object having identity name like what? Ram, another object identity name like what? Kiran. So what is the meaning of identity here? If you want to differentiate one object to another object, we require that unique name we can call as what? Identity. Identity is a name which is used to differentiate one object to another object. In Java language, identity is nothing but name of a hash code. The technical terminology I am introducing in coming videos. Now, one more characteristic is property. What are the properties? Ram having some height, Ram having some weight, Ram having some color. All these comes under what here? Properties. All these comes under what? Properties. In the same manner, even this Kiran is also having some properties like what? Height and weight and color. And every object having one more characteristic, that is what here? Functionalities. One more thing is what here? Functionalities. What is the functionality? Ram can speak, Ram can read, Ram can operate, and so these are the different functionalities of what? Ram object. The same functionality can having by the what? Kiran. So each and every object having some identity, property as well as what? Functionalities. Now we have different terminologies for properties. Sometimes we can call it as properties, and sometimes we can call it as variables, and sometimes we can call it as fields, and sometimes we can call it as instances, and sometimes we can call it as state. We have a different terminology, and sometimes we can call it as attributes. So we have a different terminology for properties. In the same way, for functionalities, we have different terminology. Sometimes we can call it as what? Operations. Sometimes we can call it as what? Behavior. Sometimes we can call it as what? Methods. Sometimes we can call it as what? Routines, subroutines. Different types of terminologies we have related to functionalities. Now let me highlighting one more time. What is identity here? Identity is a name or word which is used to differentiate one object to another object. And properties. So here property is talks about the state of an object. So here Ram is one object, RAM having some state like height, color and weight, all these comes on the state of the RAM. Now RAM having some functionality, what is that? Speak, I can read, I can operate laptop. So all these things, what, by using my functionality like speak, now I am giving some lecture. So all these comes under what are functionalities. So if you want to represent every real world entity, we required the best approach is object oriented programming system. Now here I talks about identity, like identity properties. I talks what is identity means differentiate one object to another object. Properties means having some state, and functionalities. What is the use of the functionalities? Functionalities are used to making a communication between one object to another object. Here functionality is nothing but what here, making a communication between one object to another object. For example, I want to know the time. For example, I am staying out of this some other place I'm staying. Unfortunately, I didn't wear my watch. So suddenly one guy appeared like a Kiran. Now I want to know about the time. Then what should I do? Now Ram is going to be talks with the Kiran by using the functionality like what? Speak. And once I'm asking time to the Kiran is also giving some reply to what here? Kiran is also giving some reply to what? Ram. So here Ram wants to communicating with the Kiran. How? With the help of the speak. As well as again to giving the reply purpose, Kiran is also using the functionality like what here? Speak itself. With the help of speak operation or with the help of speak functionality, both the objects are going to be communicate. So maybe the communication is one way, or sometimes what here? Two-way communication. Understand or not? For example, when I'm talking with the Kiran about the timing, for example, that guy is also don't wearing the watch or don't using the watch, then Kiran is not giving any proper response to me. So maybe the communication is what? One way happen, and maybe the communication happen in the both ways, nothing but two ways. So mainly here only one point. What is that? What is a functionality? Functionality is one characteristic of an object which is used to communicating with the one object to another object. This is what exactly object. For example, whenever we speaks about the object, definitely we have some idea on what here? Class concept. For example, there is no terminology like a person, there is no terminology like Ram. Understand? If there is no terminology like a fruit, there is no terminology like a strawberry. If there is no terminology like a sports, there is no terminology like a cricket. So cricket, football, volleyball, all these things comes under what? Object. Sports is what? A class. Simply, in this video, I talks about only one thing. What is that? What is an object and what is a class? An object is nothing but a real world existing thing. This only existed when the terminology is available. Terminology is available means what? Class is available. If first a class is available, then only we can develop what here? Object. Understand or not? For example, if there is no terminology like a course, there is no terminology like what? Java. There is no terminology like a .NET. If there is no terminology like approach, there is no terminology like a structure oriented and object oriented. So here the thing which are going to be feel like imaginary, that is comes under what here? Class. The thing which is existed in the real world, that is comes under what here? Object. If you want to represent all the real world objects, through technology wise, we required what here? Object oriented programming system technique or methodology. Object oriented programming system not providing any syntax, not providing any what we can call as API. It is only providing some rules. Based on the specifications, we are going to be develop our technology for what? To represent the real world entities. For example, if I speaks like account, definitely I need to develop real world objects like staff. I need to develop. First I need to develop the bank object. After I need to develop the staff object. I need to, staff means here employee object. I need to develop the customer object. So different objects is coming to the picture. Bank is existed one, and account is existed one, customer is existed one. So all these things are existed. That is what objects. So here if you want to moderate or if you want to represent any real world entity, definitely we require one technique, that is what object oriented programming system principles and approach. So I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video I am going to be talking about what exactly properties and what are the different types of properties and what is the use of the properties and when should we go for the properties. These types of interesting issues related to object we will see in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos please subscribe Naresh IT channel. Thank you.